Hello and welcome to Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Mario Scavello of the 176th District in Monroe County. On this program, I want to talk about developing effective leadership skills in all aspects of life. Many of us in the course of our lives want to improve ourselves, but don't have a good system to help guide us. Fortunately, two gentlemen from our area provided that guide for us. They're Gerardo Diadone and Jerry Hartis of Life Leadership, and we're going to talk about their accomplishments and how it can help all of us. Gentlemen, good morning. Pleasure to have you here on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Gerry, you walked into Gerardo, you walked into my store, my office, store. I'm talking about business here. You walked into my office and I said, wow, I think this is something that we need to share with our viewers. And I appreciate you taking the trip up here to Harrisburg to do this show. I think it's going to be very informative for my constituents and the constituents around Monroe and the Carbon, Pike, Wayne, and parts of Northampton that will see this show. You know, let's start off, and Jerry, I think that probably the best person to start off with you is, what is life leadership and why leadership is so important?
Well, Life Leadership is a company where we're designed to work with personal individuals or companies, corporate level, etc. And what we do is to provide the life skills to teach us to become better moms, better dads, better members in our church, our community, wherever we're doing, have a better understanding of life. Because all of us are called to be leaders in some way, shape, or form. You know, whether it's in the home with moms and dads or whatever it might be. And so many times, leadership is nothing more than influence. And so there's different ways to, of course, to get influence. And I know growing up on a farm with 14 brothers and sisters, Dad had a different form of influence, than we would have normally. But life leadership is designed to deal with the 8 areas of our life that are most important to us, whether it's our faith, our family, our finance, our fitness, our freedom, friends, following, and fun, and so forth. And to teach people in each of those areas how to live life to the fullest. Because we can be very successful at one, but if we're missing 2 or 3 of the others, we're in trouble.
I'm here in a capital with 203 eight type A personalities, and they all feel that they have their own leadership skills. But you know what? No matter what you have, you always need to better it in some way. Right. And I think you've got quite a bit of tools here. Do you want to talk about some of the tools before we?
Well, there's several different ways that we've set up a systematic program to educate people, because folks can't take time out of their busy schedule. So what we've done is to be able to incorporate it right in their lives. So as we're driving in my car, it's no longer an entertainment center, it's now become an education center.
Wow.
So that while I'm driving around, I can actually become a lady and multitask. I can do 2 things. And Johnny Carson said most folks will pay more for entertainment than they would education. And what we found is, if we can get people the right education and teach them the right life skills, that really are, our education system today is handcuffed to be able to teach, then we can teach them how to live a better life. And the various tools that we have are a subscription-based program where people will receive 4 CDs and a book each month, so they can actually drink from a water hose instead of a fire hose. Many times we go to a huge conference and we get all this great information, we bring it home and we set the binder up on the shelf, and 3 months later we might dust it off and look at it, or it may sit there just to impress visitors. Whereas what we've designed to do is to have something where people can take some time each day, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, it doesn't take much, to really pay attention to those. Because if we're going to change this country, if we're going to change America back to the foundational principles that we have, all of us, as Dwight Eisenhower said, have to have politics as a hobby. We really have to pay attention to little things that are going on, because it does affect so many areas of our life. When 50% of our effort goes in the form of taxes, et cetera, to fund that, we should really ought to pay attention to a little bit of that. And so what we do is through various books, such as this one here, Leadership and Liberty, or maybe and Justice for All, to understand that, or the life, really the foundation of the life business, launching a leadership revolution, really to teach people the skills. Okay?
It's so important mentioning we should be political, teach people about politics, because I've knocked on a couple of doors in the last few weeks, and folks who really don't know what's going on at state government or federal government. Right. But yet they're out there voting, so it's so important to educate. And what a great playing here. This is very interesting, and you talked about the life leadership, and it's fun, faith, family, finances, fitness, following, freedom, and friends. If you can.
Well, I'll tell you, when we had sat down the other day, I had mentioned to you, and I had said something. I says, you know, we don't know that we don't know, and that's so true, because with all the education that I have or what I was doing, I was good at what I was doing for the most part. But there were other areas, and these areas here that you talk about, which we call our 8 Fs, are areas that I needed a lot of correcting on, if you would, right? But since I didn't know I didn't have this, I needed someone to tell me, or I needed to read something, some good material, as Mark Twain says, because if you have material that isn't good material, it's just like you're not going to get anything out of it, just like a person who can't read, kind of thing. So with all of these areas here, if we were to take this and take the center point as a 0, and the outer part here as a 10, meaning we have really mastered, mine looks somewhat like this. A kind of wheel that you would put on a car that would flop down the road. So our whole intention is to help us to get in all of these areas. And we understand all of these. Following is the one that people need to understand the most, because at some time in our lives, Representative Scavello, we're going to be called upon to lead. We're going to have to do that at some point, whether it be home as a parent, whether it be in church, at work, somewhere. And unless we're educated, unless we gather this information, and really, once we've learned it, the other important thing is to apply it. So why don't we learn it, just like when you're on an airplane, they said that oxygen mask comes down, put it on you first so you can help the next person. So why don't we help ourselves first? And then get to the point where we can help others so they can help others. And through educating these people, and what you're saying is 100% correct. People were educated about politics years ago. I mean, my generation, generation after that, but then if you don't use it, you lose it. You forget about all of that. So people are going to hear, it's easier to talk about the negative than it is the positive for all intents and purposes. When you agree with that?
Agreed. I think that's all you're going to read about is the negatives.
So what we try to do is we try to get well-rounded through utilizing these 8 Fs and helping people to help people.
It's fabulous. You know, while you're pointing that out, it's a personal story. I have a young lady that works for me, Christine Dolan, and she's my chief of staff. She worked her way up. And I tell her all the time, I says, never be afraid to make a decision. You're leading. I says, you need to make the decision. You can't, you know, you might get second guessed in the future, but make the decision, because that's what a leader does. Otherwise,
you make the decision, and then Henry Ford said, then make the decision right.
Right.
You know, because we're going to have to adapt and adjust. And you know, the thing we found that so many things that affect people's lives, but the area of finances seems to be a real big issue. You know, that if we're out here and we're just, you know, water's clear up to our nose and we're about to drown, we could care less about politics. We could care less about other areas of our life. So if we can learn how to handle these things properly, and this packet here contains 47 of the key principles for individual personal finance. And it's written, and there's CDs, et cetera, in here that are in a form that the average person can understand.
That's great.
You know, so that they can go through this and become better. Because I found this, I thought, oh, I'm really good with money, and I'm going through and listen, but I'm going, yes, 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 oh, miss that one, yes, yes. Well, you don't have to miss but 1 or 2 of those.
And then you're,
you know, it's like jumping across the Colorado or the Grand Canyon, only missing it by that much. You know, we end up swimming in the Colorado River. And the other thing is, like Jerry said, it's so important to realize that there's stuff we don't know. Because I don't know about you, but of all the opinions in the world, I like mine the best. And you see that here in the house. You know, that we all want to, you know, we believe ours is the best. Okay, then I have to ask myself, well, Jerry, if that's your opinion, who says? Where'd that information come from? What are the results of that opinion?
Right.
And how can we change to get the results that we really want in life? I mean, we grew up on a farm up in the mountains in Pennsylvania here. We were so poor we couldn't afford to pay attention most of the time. You know, and I realized that money is somewhat important in our lives. It's not the most important thing. My God is much more important than that. People are much more important than that. But I also found that money is an important aspect. And so if we can learn to handle that one right, where it can now become our slave instead of us a slave to it. So we put this whole business program together where what we do is we teach people how to set up a business using life leadership materials. We authorize them to handle that, and they can generate substantial income, but also learn how to handle their own personal finance as well, which I think is so important.
Sure. Do you think, a great leadership trait, and of course you don't want to make too many of them, but when you do make a mistake, to own up to and admit it right up front?
We have an acronym, we have a saying as far as doing things like that. It's plan, do, check, and adjust, PDCA. Right? We plan what we want to do, we do it, we check. If we've made an error, own up to it, take care of it, and then let's adjust it and let's keep on going. So many times what happens is when we get to the adjusting area and we find the errors, all of a sudden we want to start pointing fingers. That's not the bottom line. That's not the important thing. The important thing is finding it, resolve it, and keep on going on. Again, as I said before.
And to add to that, if we accept responsibility for the error, now we can correct it.
Exactly right.
If I blame you for the error, now I have no responsibility to correct it. So it gives us, hands to work on.
It just reminds me of, this is my first term in office, and the paper called me about something. I had written a bill, and I'm thinking the bill is such a good bill that I don't have to go and knock on anybody's doors. So, and I actually blew it, but and I admitted it. So tabloid paper, Scavello admits rookie mistake, but that's okay, because I said, hey, God didn't make the perfect person.
That's right.
Admit up to it and move on and get it corrected. I passed it in the next session. Because just like you pointed out, it's you learn by your mistake and you move on. When you don't own up to it, that's when your problems create. Because you're covering that mistake, and what happens is you create more problems.
In the classroom, I always used to tell the students, because I was over 3 decades in the classroom, and I always told the students, it's okay to make a mistake. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, just as long as you learn from it.
Exactly right.
And that was the most important thing. Making a mistake and just leaving it as a mistake is a mistake.
It's a mistake. That's right.
But if we have the opportunity to learn from that and correct it and then help somebody else not fall into the same situation, now you're becoming successful for all intents and purposes.
I don't think we discussed that life book there. Do you want to pull that one up? Life?
Well, Life Leadership was written by Chris Brady, and it's filled with many pictures and just general statements. You could start anywhere in the book. It's not necessary, no table of contents or anything else. And it just helps us to understand that we have to stop and smell the roses at certain times, okay? We're so involved in making the money, paying the bills, taking care of the family and everything else, we forget about dreams, so forth and so on. I can remember many, many years ago when my boys, they weren't 16 yet, and they had all these pictures of the Lamborghinis and the Porsche and all these, and all of a sudden they got a little Lynx.
Yeah.
And I said to them, it doesn't look like any of those autos up there. And they says, no, it's not, Dad. Do you realize how much that cost? See, reality hits. Years ago, when you were 18, you had all these dreams. Today, we don't have those dreams in the young people anymore. Wow. And then usually back then, too, by time 25, you lost all those dreams. And Ben Franklin say, most men die at 25 and we're buried at 70. Well, the point in fact is, it's okay to dream. Don't be afraid to touch it, smell it, see it. Just plan it all out as if it were going to happen, because unless you do that,
it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
Without a doubt.
I tell kids, reach for the stars, and if you fall a little bit, you make it that's your number one goal. Reach for the stars,
right.
And wherever you land, at least you reach for the highest possible way. Now, I'm watching this on TV, and I'm saying, wow, how can I get a hold of you guys? What do I do? How do I contact you?
Life Leadership, really, we're each individual representatives, if you will, of the Life Leadership Company, and there will be a thing online here. There'll be a website, life-leadership.com / with, what's your number?
612-358-38.
Okay. Want to repeat it once more?
Sure. It'll be life-leadership.com, 612-358-38. And what that will do is that'll bring you to our site, and you would have the availability to peruse through that site. check out the information, so forth and so on. And then if there is any interest, you could always contact me at daydone2374@gmail.com. daydone2374@gmail.com, or you can call if you like. Some people just like to pick up that phone yet, and that's okay, because I still like to do that, and that would be 570-646-3888.
Great. You know, my dad once said, Mario, when you stop learning, you're underground.
That's right.
John Wooden said very similar. He said, it's what you learn after you know it all that really matters.
That really matters. Wow.
That's what really matters. So it's leadership and liberty.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Thank you for having us. I appreciate that
Pleasure.
immensely.
Let's take a short break. Legislative report. We'll return in a moment. I'm here at Mountain View Vineyard, Winery and Distillery, and I'm with Linda Rice. Linda, what an absolute beautiful piece of property. And I can tell you, if my dad was still alive and he'd be looking at these grapes, he'd go, wow, because he used to make his own wine at the house.
Many Italians did make their own wine, and we're so happy that you've come out here to our vineyard. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the fact what makes us different and unique from some of the other wineries in the area. We do not use pesticides, as you can probably see by some of the foliage. Very, very little herbicides, almost none. And when it comes to our actual winemaking practices, we use almost no sulfites either.
Wow.
We're very eco-friendly, and we're very conscious of what we ingest, what our customers ingest, and what our plants ingest. So we're very gentle on the environment.
I've had some of your wines, excellent wines.
Thank you.
You know, I know there's a lot of work that went into starting this. I was talking to you earlier off camera, and you said 2003 is when you
Yes.
wanted to see if you can grow grapes. And
Yes, we actually did a little test section on our split rail fence as you come up the driveway. We planted 70 vines there in 2003 just to see if we had the right growing conditions, the right terroir in wine terms, which is the right soil composition, the sun exposure, the right temperature, the lay of the land, and it turned out that it was just perfect for grape growing. Now, unfortunately, what we originally purchased was a fully wooded mountainside. So we had no intention of planting a vineyard when we purchased the property, but slowly over time, my husband and I cut down the trees, pulled out the stumps, and planted the vineyards a section at a time, and we did that on his Easter break from teaching. So it was very challenging, but here we are. Quite a few years later. It took us 6 years to have enough grapes in production to open our doors. So on September 1st, we'll be celebrating the 5th anniversary of the winery and the 1st anniversary of our distillery. Wow. So it's been amazing, a pretty amazing ride.
you know, I was at a wedding recently, and I noticed the favors were from here, and I just, wow.
Yes, yes.
What a unique idea.
Tiana and Joey, Tiana Safali and Joey Gehrig, and yes, we did their wedding favors. We get asked to do that for many folks in the area.
What a great idea. It's unique, and you're advertising the area. But I have to tell you, I tried the wine. It was excellent.
Thank you.
Absolutely excellent.
Thank you. What we hear from customers, a lot of folks who come here into the Poconos from other regions, they're quite surprised that Pennsylvania wine can taste good. I don't know whether to be offended by that or excited. But our customers tell us also that they can tell by drinking our wine how clean it is, how we don't use chemicals. We don't use chemicals to clarify our wines. We don't load them with sulfites. So they can tell the difference.
Good wine drinkers, great. They really can tell,
Yes.
and it's obvious by what you're telling me.
Yeah.
And I think what's our next step? We're leaving the winery, and from here, where do we?
Oh, our next step, we're going to go into the bottling room, into
okay.
into the actual winery. We have folks bottling right now.
Okay. You know what gets me excited, Linda? Jobs. And I'm here seeing people work.
Yes, we actually created quite a few new jobs this year. Last year we had 2 part-time staff, and this year we have 3 full-time and 5 part-time staff. And if you'll notice the folks that are bottling, we have 4 people working here in the bottling line. Instead of using a huge piece of equipment, a monoblock that automates the process from bottling the wine to labeling it, corking it, and capsuling it. Instead, we've employed 4 people to do the work for us.
Wow.
Another reason why we don't use that large monoblock is because it's very hard to keep clean. The sanitation process can take a very long time. Our equipment, each piece of equipment only takes about 10 minutes to sanitize. So we feel that's really important.
And
We want
so
that's because it is sanitized very easily, we can keep our sulfite levels very low, about 1/10 of what the average winemaker puts in their wine.
I'm hearing this, that you're in green technology here. I'm very impressed with that. Talk about it briefly.
Well, we have several items here that we don't see in other wineries. One is that behind this block wall, we actually have tanks that are submerged in concrete, and they have Aquapex tubing around them that circulates hot water to bring up the temperature for fermentation. We have solar panels on the outside of the building. There are vacuum tubes. And then if you notice the orange tubing over there, that's the Aquapex that goes around each and every tank to control the fermentation temperatures. If we don't need to warm up the temperature to raise it for fermentation, it gets channeled into our floor. So we have radiant floor heat in here. We no longer use propane. We minimize our electricity by using these different procedures here. Mario, what you're holding in your hand is one of our most popular wines. It's called Mountain Goat Red. It is the sweetest of our red wines, hugely popular in the Northeast. If you'll notice our logo here, it's a mountain goat in a wine glass, and that came about because I would tease my husband that you have to be a mountain goat to work this property. So it kind of stuck, and our son Bobby came up with the logo, the mountain goat, the wine glass, and our split rail fence.
Now, this is a sweet wine, you said, right?
That's a sweet wine. Altogether, we produce 13 varieties of wine. We produce 4 whites, from dry to sweet. We produce 2 rosé wines. One's a dry, one is a semi-sweet, like a white Zinfandel. And we produce 6 reds, 3 sparkling wines, 2 dessert wines or port-style wines, as well as all of our distilled products. We grow 9 grape varieties here, and from those 9 grape varieties, we produce those different varieties.
9 varieties of grapes make all of those varieties of wine here.
Yes, we actually produce about 6,000 gallons of wine a year here. Relative to some of the other wineries, we're very small, and that all has to do with our low carbon footprint. We could produce a lot more grapes, make a lot more wine, but then we would have to implement some of the practices that we don't want to implement, like spraying chemicals if we want to grow different grape varieties, or using more expensive equipment that will take more energy, and so we choose not to do that. By not increasing our volume, by controlling the growth and producing smaller quantities, we're able to control every aspect of it. The more you have to rush product through because of overproducing, the more opportunities there are for having bacteria growth, for making mistakes, having to use chemicals to clarify, having to use more sulfites, that sort of thing.
And I applaud you for that, because to me, you're putting the right products in here, and you can be sure that what you're consuming it's got all of the good things in a bottle of wine, in the wines that you drink.
Well, thank you. Why don't we head over now to see Randy, my husband. He's in the distillery.
Thank you. Here we are in the distillery, and I'm here with Randy and Linda. And how did this come about?
Well, actually, a few years ago, I was finishing up making wine. I came in late at night, and I sat down and watched the History Channel. It was a usual practice of mine, and the Moonshiner series was on. And it was just intriguing. So the next morning, I woke up, and when my wife got out of bed, I said, "Hun, I've got this really great idea."
I'm like, oh no, not another idea. We already work 7 days a week, so what are we going to do now?
And that was the beginning of our distillery.
You know, I have to be. I'm really impressed with the cleanliness in the facilities. You know, and I know that's paramount to a fresh product, a good product. And want to talk about it a little bit? You know,
well, we really believe that if we sanitize things really well, that we don't have to use the amount of chemicals that are so commonly put into products like ours. Along with that, the fact that we're a craft distillery, we're able to start and stop our still every day. And when we do that, we're able to clean it out and prepare for the next day. So we believe that just makes a smoother, faster, easier drinking, better drinking product than a large distillery can produce.
And what products do you make here?
We make one of our seems like our friends and guests' favorite is our apple pie moonshine. People come back every week for that, along with our corn whiskey. We make a number of flavored vodkas that are actually used. We use fresh pressed local fruit in order to blend it in with them, and we use no preservatives and no additives. Other than that, no special colorings or additives.
And then we also produce a brandy, Randy's brandy, actually.
Randy's brandy, nice. You know, how did you come up with the idea of wanting to put the distillery in, outside of the fact that you had the dream, but you also, from what I understood, people would come here for wine tasting, and the husband or the wife, one of them didn't drink wine, so that was another incentive for you.
That was a big incentive for us. We literally watched time after time. A husband or a wife, a significant other would sit down at one of our tables. They would watch as their husband or wife would start a tasting. And I said to my wife on a regular basis, I wish we had something for everybody, so that nobody had to leave here feeling like they didn't get anything out of the experience. And so this really helps that.
And where are we going to go from here? The wine tasting?
Oh, we're going to go to the wine tasting room, and we'll talk a little bit about the different varieties that we produce, the different wines, and some of the special events that we host here.
Great. Let's go over. You know, Linda, we're ending our tour where everything begins personally, right? This is where the customer comes in, and this is where they get to see what you have.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Well, first of all, our wine tasting process is unique compared to the other wineries in the area, in that we pair each one of the wines with a different gourmet cheese, dip, or dark chocolate, foods that we know complement each wine. We have them sip the wine first so that they don't think we're masking a bad wine with good food. Then they take a bite of the food, and then they take another sip of the wine. And we really want them to know how much food can affect the flavor. I don't want them to purchase wine here, love it, get home, and think, what was I thinking? This does not go good with my meal. We have here on the bar a couple of our signature, most popular wines, the first one being Split Rail Red. That is our very first wine that we produced here. It is a huge seller. It outsells everything by far. Started with an experimental batch on our split rail fence as you were coming up the driveway. And to this day, 5 years later, we're still producing wine with those same 4 varieties of grapes. And then this one here is, it's our newest red. It's a dry red called Noire. And this one is actually being carried at some of the local restaurants. This is being carried at DeSaki's. It's being carried at Barley Creek Brewing Company, and the Chateau is about to pick this up also. The Chateau does carry some of our wines, but they're picking this one up also. And the hope is that with them picking up these wines and realizing how delicious our wines are, that we'll get into some of the other restaurants. We're working with Pocono Manor right now and the folks at Kalahari to get into those places too. New for us this year, we've opened 7 days a week for the first time starting May 1st. We're open Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Sundays from noon to 4. We host a lot of events all summer long. We serve fresh sangria out back on the patio area. Sundays we have live music and we serve wine slushies. We do an Easter cork hunt for adults up in the vineyard where we paint and number corks, bury them up there, hide them in the vineyard. Then they come back in and we raffle off prizes for them. So we do a lot of really nice events here. Fun. Yeah. That's the goal. Simply Fun Wine and Spirits actually is our. Yeah. Oh, if I may just very quickly add that we are we're opening up an event space upstairs, but we'll be able to host small events that are between 30, 35 people. Perfect. Small rehearsal dinner perhaps, a small anniversary party, maybe a business meeting, that type of thing. And then over in the other room, we do specials with cocktails now because we do have the distillery. We have martini or margarita Mondays, and actually last week we made it a mimosa Monday instead. Wow. So we do different specials each day of the week too.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.